Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the New Balance 2-Way Volume 3, and I can't begin to tell you how many comments I have gotten recently, like in the last month or two, requesting me to review this shoe, saying how great it is and how everybody loves it, and everyone's saying it's the shoe of the year and this and that. And when I finally got them in hand, put them on my feet, and kind of spent a couple minutes with them, I could see right away why people like this shoe so much. And it's a very simple reason. We'll get into that in a little bit. Here we go. And speaking of why everybody likes them so much, the thing that I like about them the most actually comes in the lace line. If you look, the two peaks of the end here of like the New Balance symbol, it is actually a corridor for the laces to go through. So every time you're tying the laces down, you're getting these two flaps that come up over your midfoot, which do give you an incredible feeling of lockdown. It also has some implications for fit versus some other New Balance shoes, which we'll talk about in the fit section. But from, coming from a foot doctor perspective, to have this kind of lockdown and this kind of containment on a shoe that's as light as it is, kind of as bottom light as it is, really a nice feat of engineering. And even to take that a little bit further, going further into the uppers, when you look at them, they look like they're a pretty bogged down, heavy upper, but they're really not. I mean, look at it under the microscope. You've got these tightly packed strands in there, so you'd think they would just hold on to heat like crazy. However, if you look at the breathability test on these things, they only heated up 95.2 degrees, cooled down another 40.6 degrees, and usually when the shoe doesn't heat up more than 100 degrees, right, there's not further for it to go when it cools down, so it won't cool down that much. However, they still let go of that heat incredibly quick, and even just having my hand on them after I put the heat gun on them, they just were not hot to the touch. Usually these shoes start to radiate heat afterwards. And for, especially all this reinforcing kind of padding on the outside, like something like it's kicking your foot or you get trampled on. One thing I did not like about the uppers of the two ways was the feeling and sound I got when I was tying them down. And that sounds weird, but just the straining noises I was hearing as the laces were going through the lace line just made me think that they were going to rip. Now, they might not. They might be the strongest things on earth. And they do go through a lot of canals here and channels, so there is a lot of material rubbing up against it. But like I said, just in my mind, I kept hearing that, thinking like, are these things gonna rip? So it might not be the case, but that was really something that I just kept noticing when I put them on. And on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, the burr does make it through that initial drag guard. However, it does not make it through the under layer of the drag guard. So I'd say even, on outdoor courts, I think as long as it's not super gritty asphalt, I think if you're a dragger, I think these will still be okay. Like I said, just watch out for the really gritty stuff because you might start to catch after a while. And getting into the midsole teardown on the Volume 3s, there were some significant upgrades from the Volume 2s. However, one thing I want to make mention of, New Balance always does give you a pretty thick insole in the shoe. Now, yeah, these will still bottom out over time, but you're still getting a much more durable, kind of substantial product than you get with some other removable insoles. And speaking of substantial products in your insole, that brings me to today's sponsor, which is Power Step and their Pinnacle Orthotic. And if you've watched this channel at all over the last few years, you have heard me talk about Power Step and how they are the best orthotic on the market for broad, stout arch support. I've said this so many times. They have better arch support than a lot of custom orthotics I've seen people come into my clinic wearing. They have about the best arch contour you can get on the market for an over-the-counter orthotic, and with their multiple layers of padding as well as shelling in the orthotic, you get number one, a really comfortable fit, but number two, like I said, a very stout product underneath of your foot to hold that arch up. Now the Pinnacle comes in a low, the standard, as well as the high, and to me, I like the standard the most because I feel like it fits the most feet. However, you can get even more customizable if you want to go for just minimum arch support to kind of that moderate arch support, the one I like, all the way up to the maximum arch support if you really need a lot or if you're kind of a really hypermobile foot. So if you want to put something in your shoes that is going to give you the most arch coverage that you can get, like I said, even better than some custom orthotics in terms of control, then make sure you check out my link in the description below. I actually do have a discount code in there as well. Thank you again to Power Step for sponsoring this video, and on to the upgrades in the Volume 3. Now, what I like so much about the Volume 2s, they had the rubberized adsorb padding in the back where it was kind of placed right where you'd put the most stress on your calcaneus or your heel bone. But what they did in the Volume 3 is actually took that and brought it into the forefoot. So if you look at all the dots here on the forefoot, those correlate with your metatarsal heads. I mean, I guess there's only 3 of them there, so it doesn't correlate with all of them. But underneath of it is a nice layer of that adsorb rubberized padding as well. So you're getting that same real forgiveness in the heel you get in the forefoot. Now, what I really like about a lot of New Balance's, I would say lighter weight basketball and tennis products, hint into why everybody likes these so much, but they do put a really substantial shank in a lot of those lighter weight basketball and tennis products. Now the rest of the midsole is pretty simple. It's just a full slab of fuel cell foam. They're ETPU, very lightweight based foam. Now if you look at this one on the bounce height test, 30.5 centimeters in the rear foot, 31 centimeters in the forefoot. I think you're seeing more of the bounce of the adsorb, the rubberized layer, which I kind of thought would have gotten more bounce height. However, in the two-way volume 3, the strobe board here is a very dense foam there, which actually absorbs a lot of shock. So I think that actually took the bounce height of these down a little bit. Suffice to say, I think you get a little bit more performance out of these than the bounce height test shows. However, I think the performance you're getting out of them is because that fuel cell is so bottom light. So you just feel a little bit more airy, a little bit more light of foot in them versus some other shoes which are really giving you a lot underneath of you. And getting into the outsole tread, it's this nice rippling pattern, both from the rear foot as well as the forefoot, coming out of these like strategically placed dots out of there. From there, it just kind of ripples into these pretty linear bands that go throughout the shoe. Gives really good grip in multiple directions. Herringbone is great for multiple direction grip. However, wave patterns too give you kind of a similar thing. The only thing you gotta watch out for is with these waves, these little ripples, the more linear treads, they will wear down faster because there's just not as much tread. There's not as much surface area, I should say, to kind of share the load of all that friction. If you look at the outsole durability test, 10 seconds, highest grit sandpaper, speaking of, I mean, not even, well, kind of about a millimeter of damage on this, on about a 2 millimeter tread depth. Now the durometer is decently high on these, so I still think they'll be okay on outdoor courts for you. If you don't shuffle step a ton, I think for someone that has a little more fluid footwork, they should be fine on those outdoor courts. But like I said, just remember, the thicker the tread pattern on the bottom, the better load sharing you're gonna get on those outdoor courts. However, if you're looking for great grip even on slick outdoor courts, especially with all these little almost suction cups in the rear foot and the forefoot, these will have you covered if you're playing on those really slick painted outdoor courts. And along that same vein, if you look at the speed ratio, the volume 3s comes in at a 2.14, which I honestly think is pretty decent for a shoe with this kind of profile. A little bit, you know, more mid-top ankle collar, a little more substantial lockdown, but still bottom light enough to be able to let you use your own tools with speed in these shoes. So I would say for a shoe that has nice lockdown, pretty good side-to-side stability, these are actually a pretty nimble, speedy shoe. Now the one thing that threw me off about the two-way volume 3 was their fit. Now, if you don't have the same forgiveness as a lot of other New Balance shoes I've kind of gotten accustomed to, and looking at them, I've only really seen them in standard width. I haven't seen the 2E. It might be out there and I'm just not seeing it, but narrow, medium foot, true to size is fine. A 2E though, I would be going up a half size. And the reason is this whole apparatus here on the lateral side that locks you in so well also comes right over the lateral side of your foot, taking this lateral stabilizer here with it. And that really can suck down over the lateral side of your foot, give you some cramping. I had cramping in these for a while playing in them, and you know, because the upper is a little more substantial, the break-in is not as clean for a 2E as like some other New Balance shoes are, just some other shoes that break in a little easier. Now, if you are somebody with a snake bitten foot, this is one of the better products out there because of the rubberized adsorb in the forefoot as well as in the rear foot is going to give you a lot of forgiveness. Fuel cell in of itself is pretty forgiving as well. I would say for the snake bitten foot, yeah, these are a pretty kind of all-encompassing good product. But getting into the playability of the two-way volume 3, and at least in my opinion, why everyone keeps saying that, you know, I need to try this shoe, it's one of the best out there, it should be up there for shoe of the year and all this other stuff. And that's because, at least to me, feels a lot like the New Balance 996, just in a mid-top version and with some like updated tech. Now the New Balance 996, you that don't know, is just one of the most popular, kind of lighter weight, more minimal tennis and pickleball shoes on the market. It's been one of the best for years now. Every review I do on these every year, everyone just keeps saying how much they love it, how many pairs they're stocking up on it. And at least in my opinion, it marries the best of the most minimal speed focused shoes with a lot of the features you get from more maximalist tennis shoes. And if you look at the silhouettes of the two of them, they're really similar, and on foot, they feel very similar, especially going side to side, especially their giddy up and go. They're really thick, broad shanks on them for a shoe that's a little bit more minimalist, the fuel cell, just kind of the overall shape. You know, I think you take a pedigree of a shoe like the 996, which has been popular forever in the tennis space, and then just kind of add the little things that a basketball player would want from a tennis shoe because they are so, you know, similar. And look, you get all the R&D from all the years of people loving this to produce something like this. And you can see it's a shoe that most people like because it just has a little bit of something for everybody. It's speedy, it's shifty, it locks you down side to side, and it is pretty protective, both going up and down as well as to external forces. Now, I do think these are a pretty good marriage of shoes, all the way from a really shifty guard, all the way to like a lighter weight center could easily wear this shoe for more forgiveness. It really does span all the positions on a basketball court. And I would say if you're someone that doesn't produce a lot of friction on a tennis or pickleball court, it's also a great pickup for that. And that's why, like when I put these on, I just kept saying like, this is the 996 mid basically. So I think the two of these really complement each other well. And I think if it wasn't a conscious decision to make it look like this, then there was definitely a lot of inspo from this shoe to whoever was designing them. But let me know down in the comments below kind of what you've been thinking of the Volume 3s now that it's been out for a while now, so people have had more kind of extended experience with them. If you like them as you've been wearing them for a while, you know, let me know down below, especially because the prices have been coming down. And if you do want to see their sibling to the New Balance 2-Way Volume 3, the New Balance 996 V5 or the 2-Way Volume 3 Low, whatever you want to call it, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.